Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Broken Record Chronicles. I'm your host, Rob Bell, and we talk about the issue of crime and violence in America ad nauseum, as if it was a broken record. You can get caught up in all the other rigmarole that's going on in the United States. You can get caught up in the war in the Ukraine. You can get caught up in the Chris Rock, Will Smith smack. You can talk about a multitude of issues that are occurring in the United States. But you can't hide behind the fact that crime in America and violence in America is at an all time high. I read an article the other day that said that there was a 56% increase in crime all across the country. And that's over 50%. That's kind of a outrageous statistic. And if you don't believe that at some point that's going to come back and haunt us, you better take another look. I was talking to my brother this morning, as I always do. You guys always hear me refer to our conversations. And one of the things that he said to me is, how is the United States going to look 20 years from now? How is the Black community going to look 20 years from now? And I really didn't have an answer for it, because you can blame crime on law enforcement. You can blame crime on the, I guess, laid back attitude of the states and cities around the United States. But at the end of the day, you have to talk about the attitudes that people, especially in our communities, in the Black communities, have when it comes to crime. I talked to one of my former colleagues last night, or should I say, I got a text from one of my former colleagues last night here in Atlanta, Georgia. And in downtown Atlanta, there's a main transportation hub called Five Points. Just like in Philadelphia, there are main transportation hubs in Frankfurt, Broad and Olney, 69th and Market, 15th and Market, and Broad and Patterson. Well, Five Points is a main transportation hub in downtown Atlanta, and he is a, for lack of a better word, public safety officer of one of one of my former employers, and we still keep in touch. And he told me, say, Rob, guess what? Somebody just got shot in the head at Five Points. And it was alarming to me, because that's an area that I used to work in on a frequent basis, on a daily basis. And a lot of my former colleagues still frequent that area. And I said to him, I said, man, please be careful. He gets off at 10 o'clock at night, and he uses that transportation hub to catch the train to get to his car so that he can get out to his home in the metro area. He later texted me and said, when he went down to the train, it's as if nothing happened. People were going on about their business like it was no big deal. There were no police officers down there. There were no modern police officers down there. And it was just like an everyday occurrence. And if that is the case, that's a damn shame, because it's indicative of the attitudes that people have in our community when it comes to crime and violence. And they're just, I guess, thing about it's no big deal. I listened to a press conference that the chief of police in Philadelphia had the other day. Her name is Danielle Outlaw. And one of the things she said was, don't think and have the attitude that, hey, crime happens because this is just the way it is in the city. This is just the way it is in some of our neighborhoods. And we have accepted it because it's not the norm. And as far as she was concerned, she's not tolerating it and she's not accepting it. And as a police department, she's going to do everything in her powers to try to eliminate as much crime as she possibly can. But when she has to make a statement like, don't look at it as just being, this is just what happens in our neighborhood. What that says to me is that that's exactly how people feel. People go on in their everyday lives and think, hey, that's just the way it is. This is the price we pay when we live in the quote unquote hood. This is the price we pay when we live in the ghetto. This is the price we pay when we live in a major urban city. People do crime. People commit murder. People commit carjackings. People commit felony assaults. People shoot each other. And we go along and about our business and we accept it. Well, what happens when you're laying in your bed and you're in your house and a bullet comes through your walls and shoots you and your child while you're in the comfort of your home, your sanctuary, your castle, the place where you go to get peace? What happens with that? Well, that's exactly what happened in Philadelphia the other day, where people were laying in their homes and a bullet came through their wall, pierced the wall, and shot a woman and her son while they were laying on their couch. These idiots were having a gun battle in front of her house, not even caring about where the bullets were going to fly. And as a result, those bullets came through that woman's home and shot her and her child. By the grace of God, they both lived. And they were able to talk about it and tell the police exactly what happened. The day prior to that, the police, or SEPTA police, got into a gun battle with a man in Frankfurt in Philadelphia, and he shot a SEPTA police officer. And again, by the grace of God, that police officer survived. But that 18-year-old man decided to turn the gun on himself and shoot himself. And so when SWAT stormed the house that he ran into, they found him dead. So we lost an 18-year-old man to violence, his own violence, and we were lucky enough to have a SEPTA police officer survive the violence that that man perpetrated while he was out in the streets of Philadelphia. Later on, or earlier in that week, a 13-year-old young man was shot, I believe, at 49th and Hoop Street in West Philadelphia as a result of gunplay and gun battling in the streets. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Down here, someone gets shot almost every night, either in Buckhead or in Atlanta or in the Atlanta metro area. And it's just on and ongoing crime that is being committed in both these major cities. I talk about Philadelphia and Atlanta because I'm from Philadelphia and I now live in Atlanta. So those two cities are near and dear to my heart. One, because I live down here. Two, because I grew up in Philadelphia, and never, as much and as violent as Philadelphia has always been, never have I witnessed nor experienced as much violence as I see in the city of Philadelphia. Oh, and by the way, I used to be a police officer in Rochester, New York. And after several years of doing police work, I can still make the statement, never have I seen as much violence that's occurring in our cities across America. And I keep tabs on Rochester, New York as well, because I have children that live there still. And obviously, I'm still concerned about them. And they are experiencing the same kind of horrific violence and homicides as any other city in the United States. Maybe not to the tune of the numbers that a city like Philadelphia is getting in, but still, in comparison to the size of a city like Rochester, New York, they are experiencing astronomical rates of violence and homicides in their own right. When are we going to, change our mindset and start to put some pressure not only on law enforcement, but also on the people who live in our communities to put pressure on their young children to stop this violence? And the reason why I say this is because a lot of this violence that's occurring is happening by young people between the ages of 13 and 21. And so these people have parents, and these parents know what their young people are doing. You can't tell me that they don't. And if they do and they're not doing anything about it, then they're being irresponsible. So as a community, we need to start putting pressure on our parents in our community and adapt this. It takes a whole village kind of mantra to solve the issues that continue to go on in our communities so that we can ratchet down this violence and get a hold and get a grip on this thing. We cannot continue to depend on law enforcement and local city governments and local state governments and the federal government to come into our communities and ratchet down this whole issue of violence. We cannot continue to rely on this whole idea of creating gun laws in our respective states and with hopes of, I guess, ratcheting down people's ability to buy handguns in the country. And as a result, the expectation is for violence to go down because there's no evidence that has suggested that that has happened. Every state has its own hand law or handgun law, and every state is going to operate differently. Oh, and by the way, despite each state's handgun law, the violence all over America continues to happen. And so I go back to this. It's a mindset, people. I'm talking to you, young people. Put the guns down and start picking up books and educating yourself and putting yourself in a position to do bigger and better things than go out there and kill people. It ain't that many drugs in the world. It's not that much money in the world. There's not that much love or people being unloved in the world because domestic violence is an issue as well. Attitude for our fellow man is an issue as well. I don't like him. I don't like her. We can't get along. He's from that neighborhood. She's from this neighborhood. We don't get along with them. We don't like them. He stepped on my toes. He said something mean to my girl. I heard him on social media last night. I don't like his TikTok. All that is nonsense. It's nonsense. People are dying every single effing day because you don't want to adapt a lifestyle and a mindset that says enough is enough. You as parents are not being responsible to corral your young people and horn them in and tell them enough is enough. Cities, states, and the federal government are coming up with what they think is the solution by funneling monies into community service organizations and grassroots organizations to help squash down the violence. And again, clearly, that's not working. So, with all the brilliant minds that we have out here, with all the smart young people who have the ability to come up with all types of music and fashion and rap and art and all the things that we say we need to give our young people more of, why can't we come up with any solutions to ratchet this violence down? Why? Because we don't want to. I think to a large degree, violence is being perpetrated because it generates money. And I've said this time and time again. It gives people an opportunity to make a buck on the backs of people who are disenfranchised, and more importantly, people who live in the Black community, because at the end of the day, nobody cares about Black people anyway. They've never cared about Black people in this country. And no matter what Black people do, this country will always find a way to keep them disenfranchised and to keep them downtrodden and to keep them in poverty and never provide any thumbs up or one ups for anybody or any person that is of color to do anything to be competitive in this country of economic shame, because that's what it's about. It's a shame that we are the so-called greatest economic force in the world, or at least one of them, but we still got people sleeping in the streets. We still got people dying in the streets. We still got children being killed on a daily basis, and we can't come up with any mechanism or anything to prevent the viciousness of how people are being murdered on a daily basis. Well, I'm going to be the voice. I'm going to be the person that continually talks about violence and murder and mayhem in our communities, especially the black community, because I want to get on your goddamn nerves. I want every time that you see me, here he go again with this whole thing about violence. Yeah, that's me. Here I go again. And I want to be that guy because as much as I continue to talk about it, as much as I continue to reverb my voice when it comes to speaking up, out, and against violence, I want to be a pain in the ass. Yeah, I said it. A pain in the ass. I want to be the Malcolm and the Martin of the airwaves. Back then, we had to pound the sidewalk. We had to protest. Now, we have the avenue of the internet to use. We have the avenue of social media to use. And we don't take advantage of it to do this. We'd rather TikTok, we'd rather twerk, we'd rather dance, we'd rather glam than use the mechanism of social media to sound the alarm that violence is out of control in our communities. This is Rob Bell, and this is another edition of Broken Record Chronicles. If you like what you heard, make sure you press the thumbs up button and share this video with your friends and family, because if you don't, the information can't get out. And I'm quite sure if I was doing something nasty or inappropriate, you'd share that with your friends and family, because either you'd find it erotic or you'd find it funny. But for some reason, you don't find what I'm talking about now even relevant. And so you want to tuck it. Crazy. Share it with your friends and family. Give me a thumbs up. Like me on my Facebook page. Like me on my YouTube page. Like me on this channel. And by all means, subscribe. The more subscribers I get, the more opportunity I get to get this information out. Once again, I'm Rob Bell. Have a great day.